Greetings, gods and goddesses in training. Welcome back to the channel. It is Uncle Makara. All relations. Let's get started today with today's incredible video on how you gotta know when people are throwing shade at you and trying to take your shine from you, man. This is really, really important to understand because you cannot get fruit from fruitless trees. Okay, this is the datum. You cannot get fruit from fruitless trees, because if somebody is only seeking validation, only seeking approval, only seeking the outside circumstances of life, and never exploring the inner depths of their inner world, they're gonna constantly get caught up in different kinds of situations and illusions that don't actually serve them, right? So the first thing to understand is, are there people in your life that are throwing shade at you, right? Throwing shade at you meaning they're not truly allowing your inner light to shine, right? The word namaste, the light in me sees the light in you, right? So I say flow must stay, the flow in me sees the flow in you, right? And so this is this understanding that there is another light being here in front of me, but maybe they're not choosing to experience themselves as pure sunlight. They're keeping themselves a little bit dim or hidden, or they're afraid, or they're in bitterness, or they're in their own head, right? And so all of these different things are of course going to be affecting their mindset, their beingness. Now, the idea of receiving some level of a pushback is absolutely inevitable. Like, you're going to get some level of a confrontation or a resistance whenever you try to do something epic, do something new, go towards a new lifestyle, right? Recently, a client of mine was talking about how whenever they are in the stretch zone from the comfort zone, they get this feeling of panic, right? But they're going immediately from, okay, I'm in a comfort zone to a panic zone, right? There's no stretch zone, there's no ability for growth, because the mind is so running survival scripts and running in survival mode that it cannot even rest and rejuvenate and actually enjoy this experience we call life. So the best thing for you to understand when you're going through this phase is to consciously slow down, right? Not subconsciously slow down, consciously slow down. Because life will unconsciously slow you down for many different reasons. But if you can consciously take a breather and understand that sometimes the flower just needs the right environments to bloom, right? So if you're living in a very toxic environment right now, you're not enjoying the space, try and get out in nature any way that you can, right? And take little breaks from that so that you can rejuvenate your inner world over and over again, right? And we have so many techniques that we practice as adepts, the Maharic seal, the many different ways that we, approach this inner sanctum of ours. So if you want to know more tools to keep yourself protected, definitely reach out. But other than that, I think that one of the best things for you to understand and do is that you're going to have to get very clear on the pushback that you're getting, and then not push back, but push forwards, meaning that you push forward and ahead into the mission that you truly prefer and deserve, right? And you're not looking for all the noise and the static in the background that seems to be taking you away from your preferred mission in this lifetime. So that's the first thing that you want to understand is notice the pushback and what it means to you. What does this pushback mean to you? And then as you notice the pushback, you still find a way to keep moving forward no matter what, right? And even if you have to take little mini steps, you still keep the ball rolling, right? You don't get into the stagnancy and you don't get into the sedation, right? A lot of people try to numb themselves through numbing agents, right? To try to stay even more stuck and suppressed because they feel that they're causing such a big threat into the physical world. But man, you got to have such a light inside of you that burns up any narcissist, any sociopath, any random person who's here just as a clone, an NPC in this lifetime. Just burn them all up with your inner light, with your holy fire. It does not matter, because you are at a different level now. You're at a different speed, you're in a different consistency, and you're starting to notice all of the bullshit that's there in the background of your life, right? That just you keep ruminating on, but you want to actually start to look ahead instead of look backwards, or look horizontally or vertically, right? we have to understand both dynamics and this push and pull of life, right? You're doing something, there's going to be a force that pushes you away from what you're doing and your greatest, soul's evolution, of course, right? It's like you're going towards the finish line. There's going to be other competitors, right? And so forth. But in terms of this competition mentality, you want to be the winner in all realms, in a sense, okay? So what I mean by this is you are not just thriving here in the physical world, you are chilling in all dimensions and different substructures, right? Even in the astral, you're winning. That's the mentality that I want you to have as a savage shaman, as a priest or priestess beast, because then you can actually handle anything that comes your way, right? You're not so sidetracked, you're not so perturbed by like what is coming up as a byproduct. Instead, you're actually seeking some level of new realization, right? A new epiphany, rather than just being caught up in a game of charm or wit, or trying to, use self-aggrandizement, or, putting yourself up on a pedestal, rather than actually witnessing the gift and the true beauty that you're here to give on planet Earth, okay? So this is why it's very, very important for you to consider what your top strengths are. If you're not using your top strengths in what you're doing, the shade is gonna feel more shadier, okay? So that means you have to learn how to shine your light and move forwards with your light, even when there is adversity, chaos, a little bit of shakiness from the outside world, okay? Now, this is about fully feeling safe within, so the outside world also remains safe for you, okay? To handle these different entities and so forth, you're gonna actually have to be tougher in your mentality, right? These lower dense beings, they don't really respond too much to softness, compassion, love, and light, though if you can stay in silence and presence, that's very powerful, okay? So if you can remain as the awareness, the witness consciousness, and you can stay there, that's very good in staying non-detectable, right? But if you're reacting and overreacting, you're actually feeding and you're almost giving a signal to these beings, right? And so this is why I choose when I'm going to react, really like preserving my energy enough to know when I respond, it's going to be from a state of mind that I'm not going to overextend myself, right? Or give myself too much of an agenda, right, to go through. Instead, it's going to be much more free-flowing, much more loving, much more impactful. So this is just a different mentality, a different way of thinking about this. And nowadays, like I told you, I just point to the entities, right? And I got Ryan G to do this today as well. Point to the different entities that feel mucky, or feel like, there's a weirdness in your body system, right? Like you have a weird, like a kind of a tugging or a clenching feeling like this somewhere in your body, like a tightness or a soreness. You can just point to it, right? Like you're kind of pointing to gotcha, right? Like you've got the being, and essentially then you can use your vocal command and your toughness and your sovereignty to then send it out, right? By the power invested in me and by the power invested in the source light. Be gone now, unknown entity, right? So this is a very, very powerful protocol, and it's a very quick protocol too, right? So if you're not doing this already, this is definitely something for you to try, okay? Now, you might be completely unfamiliar with spirituality, with these different things that I'm saying, but that's why we learn, right? That's why we ask questions, that's why we move forward, and we begin starting to understand that there's many different spiritual masters that will give you all these different bits and pieces, but it's up to you to find the actual great tapestry or the grand design of this all, right? And you can only do that by getting with your silence and stillness, right? You can only do that by going inwards and actually understanding what are these thoughts, emotions, ruminations, what kind of pattern are they looping into, right? And how can I get out of that old pattern and shift into a trajectory of a better pattern, right? A more evolved pattern, a more higher rendition of consciousness pattern, right? Something that actually makes me win and makes me look forward to this lifetime. So, one thing that I've definitely noticed is a lot of people are out here and they're living in this world, this waking life, with trauma goggles on, okay? So that means that they are looking at the world through the sense of pain, right? Some wounding or inner hurt that they've responded to in their lifetime, and they're looking at that and they're experiencing that internally, and then they're projecting it outwards into the world. So now they're seeing the world as painful, the world as broken, the world as separate, right? So you need to smudge the lenses off the filters of those trauma goggles, and you need to actually look from a fresh pair of eyes. This is what I keep telling you guys, but it's very, very key and important to do this, okay? When you look from a fresh pair of eyes, you're looking at the world through such a unique lens that your lens will actually help you. Your perception will actually help you when it's not being stained by these different impressions in your mind's eye, right? So if there's too many impressions like this, it's not going to really help you. But if you have a very clean lens and a clean perception of the way that you're perceiving this world, almost like you're being born here for the first time, and you don't have all these preconceptions or these different memories trying to bring you into thought loops anymore, right? You're just here and you're completely embracing the oneness and the connectedness of your human experience. So once you can do that, then things become very natural for you, right? Things become way more effortless for you, because then you're not trying to, play any type of role. You are the parts of the new loop or the storyline that you're building towards, right? So it all comes down to, there's a little cat here. So if there's an understanding of this, you can actually understand that there's a better way of doing this and a better way of looking at the current situation that you're in. So very important to consider. And if you ever know that there is something greater, there's something more to this life than all the shade that is being thrown at me, and that I can become the living light, right? I can become the specimen, the real trailblazer, the one that breaks out of the norm of this society, One of the biggest understandings that I want to tell you guys about is this understanding that even stars shine in darkness, right? So you really are going to have to understand what illuminates you from within, right? Now, there's a type of inner sanctity, like how would I explain this? Like, it's not really a sanctity, it's more like an inner reservoir, right? Or a sanctum where you can go to every time that you feel tense or unsettled in your world, right? And once you can go back to that over and over and over again, it starts to cause a monumental ripple effect in the way that you see your reality, okay? Now, notice how that guy was like, right? Notice that he's stuck in the paradigm of the 3D world, right? And he has a particular pace or a way of doing things, right? That is very different to my way of being things, which is a lot more flowing, right? And so, of course, there's going to be resistance as I make this video in this park right now, because people aren't used to this kind of calming, neutralizing agent energy. They're used to quick and fast and getting things done and going to work and having a deadline and doing it like this, exactly like this, so that it works for me, right? So it's a very different mentality to somebody who's choosing to become formless as an identity, who's walking this waking world as a flow state Jedi rather than a consumer, right? Somebody who's just like very determined, very structured, like I have to get things right, and if I don't get it right, you're so attached to your identity, yo. You are so attached to your ego. You cannot live by knowing that you were born as a different person, right? If I was choosing right now, let's say I die today and I get reborn as a woman, I would be completely happy with that notion, right? Not that I would overthink it or try to change my circumstance or try to change my experience. Like, I would know that whoever I am, I have the strength and the power. I just got to align with my greatest self and understand. So then I've got to understand that I have a specific archetype that I'm bringing to the table that is my inner light, that is way different from anybody else's perception of this thing, right? Because the perception changes the reality, right? So now that I have a greater perception that the outer world is just a reflection of my inner world, Now, when I'm looking at, let's say, this grass, I notice that I'm noticing the sensitivity within the grass, right? I'm noticing the energy structures in the grass. I am understanding that anything that I do is being reflected out in nature because I am natural as a human being, right? I'm a part of nature. I'm not separate from nature. So when I am in nature, I get the sense that I'm home, right? I'm connected. I'm home. I feel at one, at peace with my own mental continuum. And I think this is so important for people to try to understand, especially when people are trying to throw some shade in a certain way. So if other people want to dim your lights and they want to put you into a mode where it's like, you understand that once you're in this inner mode, you're gonna feel more judged because you feel like these peering eyes or this prejudice towards you that you're doing yourself in a sense, right? So you might as well just enjoy this lifetime and make it something epic and special for you rather than constantly trying to micromanage your expression, right? If I had to stop and start this video like so many times, it would take away from my free flow, right? My tonality, my inner reservoir with nature. They say that life is 90% of what happens to you and 10% of what you respond. But I notice that people let that 10% dominate their experience completely, right? And they're so perturbed, they're so irritated because nothing seems to be going their way. But it's important for you to understand that they have an expectation that it's going to go wrong too, right? They have this unconscious fear. And if you have an unconscious fear like this, you'll keep perpetuating more fear. You have to first cut the fear at its cord, right? You understand and call out the reason why that fear is absolute BS, right? Why it's an inaccurate thinking. So you keep blaming your circumstances and understanding, why is all this darkness around me? Why is there so much annoyances and poverty and people always having animosity and hatred towards each other and so forth, right? Well, that's because darkness is actually an evolutionary fuel for you. It's actually there to help you shine your light brighter, right? Because stars need the darkness to shine. You guys get that? So this understanding of that, just because there is darkness there, that means that I should be darkness, right? Is kind of like a codependent's way of thinking, or an empath's way of just merging into whoever's energy shows up, right? So you kind of have to show that you have the boundary system of the entire world could turn, aquamarine, but I'm gonna stay my color, right? No matter what. Right? The whole world could go and start joining a trend and becoming a part of this community. Oh, you haven't downloaded this app? Oh, you haven't done this yet? Oh, you haven't been there yet? Right? And creating this FOMO. I will still remain in my outcast frequency. You know why? Because I recognize this unique quality is what changes the world, right? That if I'm really going to get myself out of this reincarnation cycle, I cannot keep doing the same thing that my ancestors did. Right? I'm going to have to shake things up and shift things up and do things very differently, actually, right? I'm going to have to now start plotting like a mad mystic scientist into what I want my future realities to be. And if I become an ascended master, then I can choose to come back into this incarnation of this planet in these different forms and different avatars in different ways, right? And that excites me, actually. That understanding, it could be slightly skewed by my own ego. Of course, that's normal, right? But it's kind of a cool journey to go on, to understand that, listen, there's this future possibility, right, where I might be able to help way more people than I'm helping now, like 5,000 people on this YouTube, right? And that gives me such a grit, a laser-like focus, like that flow state Mushin mind is really being activated once I think in terms of the long term, not just the long term as in the end of my life, but the long term in terms of all my incarnations, right? And my future incarnations too. So I've noticed if people are throwing shade on you, you've got to set yourself boundaries, right? And block whatever is blocking you, okay? So let's say that someone is trying to like impose their will on you or something like this, right? What you do then is you take that energy You feel it, you acknowledge it, you breathe it in, you breathe it out, and then you align back to what you were doing, right? And this is the same thing you would be doing technically if you're doing a meditation and then you have to like say one mantra and your brain goes to like, oh, I cooking pancakes this morning or something random, right? It's the same thing. You acknowledge the pancakes. Hey, thank you, pancakes. Thank you for showing up. You know, you did a good job this morning. Okay, have a round of applause. All right, cool, cool, cool. Breathe those pancakes in and out. Back to what you were doing. Realigning to a virtuous object in your mind that overrides the code, right? You can try this experiment for yourself. Take a holy being, any holy being, okay? It could be Guru Nanak, it could be Buddha, it could be Jesus or Yeshua, it could be Shiva, it could be Mantu, okay, of the Egyptian pantheon, anything, right? Just choose a being, choose a deity, and think of them throughout the day. Just set a reminder on your phone, just think of Mantu, or think of Jinn, or think of Padmasambhava, whoever, right? Have these holy beings showing up in your mental framework throughout your days and start noticing how much more effortless, easier, and awesome your days start to get, okay? Now, I consult my guides before making, you know, huge shifts and huge decisions, and sometimes they're trickster beings too that I work with, so sometimes they put me through like very funny pranks, but that's a part of my greater ascension lesson, you could say, right? So it's putting me through the similar pranks and circumstances because it understands that I need a little bit of shaking up in this way and that way. Hey, shalom wadu. Shalom wadu. Okay, that's what I say whenever I see a wasp. The tears of Ra, right? So when you understand yourself through this lens, that I can actually set these boundaries with people and myself, right? That I'm not this amoeba, right? Like just suddenly like someone is over there and they are having this worldview and reality. Of course, there's a deep empathy and a care for them, right? As another human. And you're allowed to be jealous. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be upset, right? As a human being. This is the 3D, I'm afraid, right? We're going to have to go through these emotions and understand not to keep them as roommates, but rather as guests, right? So this is the main thing, is to understand that anger you're feeling is completely temporary. It just needs to be released to the nth degree, right? That anger, sometimes people don't express their anger out fully, right? Like right here out in nature, I can fully express out my anger, right? But this nature will not care that I'm doing that, because it's actually supportive in me doing that. If I put a hand onto the earth, or if I take my shoes off right now, right, and I ground my feet into the grass, and I imagine that I'm sending all of my negative thoughts into that world, into my undersoul chakra, right, my earth star, in my feet, down into the earth, and it's being recycled now with the earth's energy, right? Because think about how many people come and connect to the earth, right, or to the planet, and there are many people who have laughed, many people who have cried, many people who have danced, many people who have fallen over, right? So all of these experiences of human life, I think these collective morphic fields are there in different environments, right? So there's a lot of recycling of energies going on, right? And can the earth handle it? I think it can, because this is the reason why recycling even works, the biodegradable nature and the understandings of soil being a firm, solid foundation for us, right? So this is really key, actually, to start understanding, like even something as simple as agriculture can give us a better understanding of boundaries, right? If you're a highly sensitive being, get out in nature, start walking around and embracing nature more, because it's going to be very empowering for you to actually witness that these trees are flowing like you. These flowers are blooming like you. This grass is feeling the tingles, right? Each grass, imagine, is like a spinal column, right? What if you were to think that? And then you were to reflect your own spinal column as it's like this. Because I was doing a meditation the other day, and I started to notice, like, this is like, forgot the guy's name, Isaac Bentoff or something like this, right? His technique of Kundalini was very unique in that, you know, when you close your eyes and meditate, you'll notice that you kind of do this spiraling, this kind of coiling in the Sushumna. Like you'll do this on autopilot, even without you knowing what you're doing, right? A lot of you may get this sensation of like you just feel like rocking your body around like this, like a tornado kind of thing, right? But this is actually a way that you're clearing up energy through your spine, right? Because a lot of times what happens is through the Kundalini blocks of the chi or the prana in your body, it might feel like locked or like stagnant, right, in certain parts. So even if you just close your eyes and you gently just do this, right, that can be such an empowering process for you to get an inner understanding of your spinal energy, right? As we grow older, you know, I have a family history of spondylitis and things like this, so I constantly remind myself to lengthen my spine and to widen my expression more, right? Because what does this world do to us guys? It makes us shrink and become smaller, right? So that's why you have to actually train openness. You have to train your body to be more open, just like how Christ died, right, on the cross. It was this openness, the midline of where all the vagus nerve is touching all of the organs, right, is being shown to the entire world. Like, I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of this midline anymore. This is my sword, right? This is my spine. This is who I am, right? And that energy is what you need as a spiritual shaman in this day and age, right? You need to be a little bit tough like this, like you have your backbone and spine ready to fight any demon, any asura, any being that comes your way, man. Come on now, that's a puny little flea compared to my potential. Like, you really have to get this mentality, right? This mentality that can devour any negativity is such a powerful mentality to have, and you can only do this through connecting to the divine and to the source energy, right? And to keep you protected, and also hiring, you know, guides, spirit guides that actually help you in order to get to your end results, right? And to live in that frequency. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video today, kind of rambling a little bit into many different topics, but I think it's important for us to recognize, just learn to be a shining ball of light at times. You know, you don't have to worry about how you're holding yourself and what you're doing in terms of your own expression. You can actually be so free, so magnanimous, so generous, so open, and at the same time return back to your center and recharge. Okay, this is very important to know, and I hope you're having an incredible rest of your day. May the flow be with you, and stay legendary. You got this. We got this. Upward Spiral gang. Let's keep winning, okay? Let's keep winning. And I'll say hi to the crows over here. Odin's crows, Hugin and Moonin, right? Over there, saying hi to all of the nature for you, on your behalf, okay? Have an incredible rest of your day. May the flow be with you. Stay legendary. Let's win.